possible. I mean, you know, obviously guys are throwing out smoke signals and you know, decoys and all that stuff. But if it happens, I'm here for it. I think it could be one of the best things for Shedeur. I mean, if he ends up, like, if he goes to Cleveland, all right, I'm not going to say he's doomed, but Cleveland has had one franchise-level quarterback this century, and they mishandled it, Baker Mayfield.
Wow. Thanks for finally saying that about Baker.
I mean, Baker had a really nice rookie year. Bottom line, and I like OBJ, but OBJ just ruined his chances there, you know, and they took OBJ's side. Since then, I mean, the only one close, I mean, Vinny Testaverde a little bit, but really the only long-time franchise quarterback they had was Bernie Kosar in the 80s, and he wasn't, like, awesome. He was good. And then you got the only Hall of Fame quarterback is Otto Graham. So that is not necessarily a great situation. Maybe Shedeur goes there and turns it around, but that's not great. All right. The Giants, I would like him there. I've said that's where I'd like to see him. And they're a good, solid franchise, but they could lose their GM and coach going into his second year. So now he's got a whole new regime to get used to. If he goes, look, I said last week, if I'm Shedeur, I don't want to go to Vegas behind Geno. And if I'm Geno, I don't necessarily want Shedeur there. But that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Seattle at 18 wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I know Darnold's there, but that deal is kind of like a one-year deal. And Pittsburgh, obviously, at 21 would be a good, stable franchise to go to. So I don't think if Shedeur slides, he should not look at it as, unless he, you know, slides ridiculously to the latter rounds.
Well, not latter rounds, but if we throw up the picks, the thing is this. Tennessee has to get a quarterback.
Yep.
The only other two teams that have to get a quarterback, or three teams, pardon me, are the Browns, the Giants, and the Steelers. That's it. Everyone else has already hired their stopgap or traded for a guy.
But if you have a stopgap, it's a stopgap.
No, I understand, but my point is, they don't have to. If they don't love the player, they won't take him because it's not like we're like, who's going to play for us? If Rodgers does, and he seems to really wield a lot of power here, sign with the Steelers before the draft under the agreement, like, I am your quarterback for this year. One of the things that I have started to wonder is, do the Browns / the Giants feel like we can pass on Shedeur and still get Shedeur?
Really?
Not because he's there at pick 34 and 35, but because if they take Abdul Carter at 2 and Travis Hunter at 3, and then once you get, you know, to pick 16, 17, 18, could the Giants or the Browns be like, hey, we'll give you the 34th pick and next year's 2 to move back up and get him. And that actually is, I think, Brew, oddly, kind of the worst case scenario for Shedeur based on what you're painting, which is you end up going to this kind of dysfunctional franchise and you don't get the top 3 pick money or any of that. Like, it is a weird year because so many quarterbacks went in the first round last year. And then you have Geno and Darnold changing teams, Russ signing. That's 10 teams that a year ago thought they needed a quarterback that now feels set. And so I do think a real slide, if he gets past 3, is very, very possible. I think Pittsburgh would take him if they haven't signed Rodgers yet.
Yeah, I think.
But I don't know. They're trying to give Rodgers a deadline to figure that out, so I don't know that piece of it.
Yeah, there's a real possibility that he'll slide. I think Pittsburgh will take him if they got Rodgers. If they didn't have Rodgers, I think he would still be on the table for them because they would be looking at Aaron Rodgers as a true, like, one-year guy, and that would be resolving their issues moving forward. But when you look at Cleveland, and Cleveland is the one that I think is more realistic, even more so than the Giants, because Cleveland has a probably the toughest decision of the teams that actually need a quarterback. Because you will have Abdul Carter on the board. And you will have an opportunity to pair him with already one of the best, if not the best, pass rusher in the game and solidify your defense for years versus, okay, do we take a shot on a guy that we don't know if he's going to be the starting guy right now this year. He might be a work in progress. We don't know how it's going to look moving forward, but we miss out on a guaranteed guy. That's the issue with when you look at the Cleveland Browns. That's why I think the Cleveland Browns are probably going to pass on him. And then when you look at the Giants, they just signed 2 guys. I know it almost makes no sense for them to go and get Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, and then say, you know what, matter of fact, let's add Shedeur instead of continuing to build out their roster, and you got coaches' jobs on the line this year. Right. Like this year. That's why I feel like he'll slide. And if he does slide, the best situation for him is probably Pittsburgh.
Can I ask about that?
No.
Why do we think Pittsburgh has the infrastructure to develop a quarterback?
Exactly.
Who involved with the Pittsburgh Steelers have done that? Like
I get their offense.
Their offense, like it's just that part of it is to me an odd one, where it's like, oh, Pittsburgh's a great franchise. Don't get me wrong, and I think Tomlin is a great NFL head coach. But if I am talking about developing a quarterback that we think is not necessarily like plug and play, immediate NFL ready, like it seems like there are some concerns with Shedeur. Not that he's not NFL style, but just a raw prospect. I don't know that Pittsburgh's a great spot for him.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I mean, where's Pittsburgh's history in developing like that and actually prioritizing the offense? I think it's interesting. Listen, if you think that the Giants are going to be adept enough to be able to draft who they want, like a Hunter or something at 3, and then trade up for their next pick, and then go draft Sanders and really be kind of strategic. I don't know. I just where some of these franchises that we think can make some of these moves, like, where's the history of them actually ever being able to successfully pull that stuff off? And this is what I always struggle with the draft and free agency at this point is because we're trying to guess like 15 different moves at this point now. And it just becomes such a mess to me. But it is interesting when we look at this, when if we say the Titans, the Browns, and the Giants don't pick Shedeur, we know the Patriots aren't. We know the Jags aren't. There's the potential the Raiders do, but probably not. The Jets, probably not. The Panthers, no. The Saints, maybe. Bears, no. 49ers, no. Cowboys, like, the Cowboys, I mean, we know, obviously, Dak, but, I mean, like, I don't know. Jerry Jones might not be able to help himself. I mean, like, who knows, honestly, but probably not. No, the Dolphins, I mean, maybe the Colts. Like, I don't know. There are still technically some questions. For some of these teams that are just kind of like Nick is kind of given these teams like, pretty strong no's, and it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe. I see more maybes than no's, quite frankly. Obviously there's a handful of strict no's, like the Falcons aren't, right? That they're a strict no. The Bears are a strict no. I assume the Jags are a strict no. But outside of that, and the Bengals are going to be a strict no. Buccaneers a strict no. The Broncos a strict no. And that gets us back to the Steelers. I don't know. So it's a weird situation. Unfortunately for Shedeur Sanders is that his last name is Sanders, so it's Coach Prime and all of that. And I feel like if there was a little bit less hype from him and this attention towards him, he would have the potential to almost kind of go how Jalen Hurts was drafted, where he kind of just sneakily went in the second round, and it was kind of just like, oh, what is this? The Eagles drafted Jalen? Like, why? They got Carson and this and that, and they're like, oh, they're going to try to use him as kind of like this hybrid thing and maybe Wildcat and a couple packages. Like, it was never like a real plan. No one ever really got the sense of like, oh, they're moving on from Carson. And I just talked about this the other day where it was like, You know, even when Jalen Hurts officially took over the role of the starter, it was only because Carson Wentz was like, I want out of here. Get me out of here. They fired Doug Peterson for Carson Wentz to try to keep him. You know, so like they were trying to make Carson Wentz still happy, which is not something you would do for a quarterback who you are going to bench for Jalen Hurts. So it is, I wonder if there's any of these other sneaky teams out there where something like that could be potentially happening, like a Jacksonville Jaguars, like a, Miami Dolphins. You just don't know. You don't know. Miami might be like, dude, we can't keep doing this with Tua. You know, the chances of him getting another concussion next year are like 7 out of 10. What are we going to do? You know, like I don't know. Honestly, the Colts, like what are they going to continue to keep doing with what they're doing here? So I don't know. I find it interesting, but the problem is that there's too much hype around him. So there's too much pressure. When Jalen Hurts got drafted to the Philadelphia Eagles, it was kind of just like well, that's weird. And then like, that was kind of it. It didn't really become anything more until the season unfolded and Carson Wentz and et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't really this like, you know, how he drafted Jalen Hurts, like Jalen Hurts needs to start this, that. Like, there was no energy behind it, honestly, especially nationally. Maybe locally it was going to be a little bit different because, you know, you used a relatively high draft pick and drafted a quarterback while you just paid your quarterback, you know, $140 million or, you know, whatever the heck the contract was at the time. It was definitely, you know, top dollar at the time. And so, but first things first. And the Herd and all that, they weren't on here being like, oh my God, Jalen Hurts to the Eagles. Let's talk about this now for the next year. There was none of that, really. None. And that's almost where it feels like Shedeur would benefit from. Like, you know, going to a team like that, going to a situation almost like that. But the problem is there's just too much energy, too much hype around him that it would just, unfortunately, it would just never happen. And no matter where he goes, I mean, just pick any of these 32 teams, quite frankly, and it'll be a massive talking point. Because also, I already get this sense that Shedeur Sanders is the type of person that drives a lot of views, a lot of interest, a lot of popularity. And so they're going to keep talking about him, just the nature of the business. I remember, you know, one of my first times experiencing that with like specifically an individual player, it was kind of Caleb Williams and Bo Nix, actually. And I made, you know, one of my first like Caleb Williams videos, and it would like, you know, just shot up. And I was like, whoa, people really want to talk about Caleb Williams. And then same thing even with Bo Nix. And it was just like, whoa, Bo Nix, man. People are into Bo Nix. And it was a fascinating experience. And fortunately, I enjoyed talking about them. So I was like, yeah, no, I want to keep making content on them, and they're going to interesting teams like the Bears and the Broncos. So like, there was a lot to talk about. If Caleb Williams or Bo Nix was being drafted to, you know, say the Jaguars or something, like it would be like, I'd feel so much more limited because I'm just like, I don't really believe in what they're doing necessarily there. But Chicago Bears obviously was fascinating, and going to Sean Payton and Denver was fascinating. So there was a lot to discuss there. But I get the sense when they keep talking about Shedeur again and again and again and again and again, I'm kind of like, oh, the Shedeur is clearly moving the needle. Like clearly people want to keep talking about this guy. And in a way that kind of works against him. I mean, it really does. He can't go under the radar, unfortunately. And so, yeah, I don't even know at this point what would be an ideal situation for him. I'm not going to necessarily say the Giants because there's a chance that the coach is gone, and then it's like, well, now who's going to be the coach, and is it going to be Coach Prime? I mean, like, I don't know. It's just, I'm not going to say the Steelers are a good place to go to either. The Saints is an interesting one, but again, you know, obviously still Derek Carr, but you know, who really knows with that situation? Miami Dolphins, you know. Like I said, you have the whole Tua situation, but that was ultimately what the Eagles were concerned about Carson Wentz staying healthy. It wasn't actually necessarily his play. It was more that he kept getting injured, and he got injured multiple times, like in the playoffs. You know, obviously missed the Super Bowl. It was like back-to-back trips So like back to back trips. So they went to the Super Bowl, and obviously Carson was injured, and they win. And then the following year, Carson Wentz goes down, and then Nick Foles takes over again and was leading the Eagles to win against the Saints. And it was their wide receiver dropped the ball like literally, and they would have won and went back to the NFC Championship game. So again, Nick Foles was leading that team again. And then the following year, he gets knocked. I believe it was the following year, definitely the next playoff year. He got knocked out. He got concussed against the Seattle Seahawks. And then they had, I don't even remember what quarterback it was. It was like some old quarterback at that point. It might have even been the third string quarterback at that time. And so I think that was when the Eagles were like, we can't keep doing this. You know, we're building good teams. We're competitive. We won a Super Bowl, but our quarterback is just not there right now. And so, you know, you wouldn't surprise you if someone like the Jags or the Dolphins are kind of like, our quarterback can't stay healthy. You know, yeah, we paid him a lot of money, but like these quarterbacks can't stay on the field right now. So yeah, I don't know. It's a questionable situation that they find them in right now. Maybe the Rams want to draft Shedeur Sanders. You know, again, if Sean McVay is really high on Shedeur and he's like, yeah, Stafford, we got him for a couple years. We got win now, and we have a great team. But we have a win now roster, but our quarterback has like this very small little window before he kind of falls off a cliff, that if we can win with him and then move on from him and already have our next quarterback, like we'll continue to still have a win now roster because of it's so much of it is built through draft picks right now that we have such youth on our side, then we won't have to kind of waste a great roster with like a young rookie quarterback because we'll already be developing like there's just more options than I think than we can automatically assume, quite frankly. So yeah, I don't know. It's I see too many options. I think that's probably also why I ultimately struggle with the draft and stuff and draft orders, because I see too many angles. You know, I can see a path for essentially every single team, and it's just like I don't know how anyone could possibly say with any degree of confidence unless you have a direct line with a true person who's making legitimate decisions. And I don't mean just kind of like an insider with one of these teams. I mean like someone who truly has the information. I just don't know how anyone could have any degree of confidence about anything. Just my feelings on it. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Shedeur Sanders potentially sliding? And do you think it would benefit him? Where would you like to see him go out of one of these 32 teams? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. It's whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.